Welcome to This Week in Local, a Localogy podcast featuring lively conversations about the local digital ecosystem, hosted by Localogy analysts Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin.
Hello, welcome to This Week in Local. I'm Charles Laughlin, Senior Analyst at Localogy, joined by my colleague Mike Boland. Mike, how's it going today?
Hey, Charlie, going well.
Great. So what's on your mind?
So we are tracking something this week where Amazon has launched a new version of its Just Walk Out technology. And this is its technologies that lets retailers essentially achieve cashierless stores. So a lot of people know this as sort of Amazon Go stores, which were largely misunderstood as some sort of end game. Really, like we detected them earlier as sort of proof of concept for what Amazon really wants to do here, which is to sort of what we're calling, it's sort of a made up term we've made, is retail as a service, is providing sort of Amazon style logistics and all that kind of stuff to retailers to help them just sort of streamline their operations. So anyway, I'll get back to that in terms of the broader goal. But anyway, looking just at the Just Walk Out technology, which is one of the pieces of that puzzle. It formerly used these sort of ceiling mounted cameras and shelf sensors so that, they know when someone took something off the shelf, and then that fed into the sort of algorithmic way of telling that they, walked out of the store with it and sidestepped the traditional bottleneck of a checkout aisle. That's the whole point. That's the Just Walk Out part. So anyway, this whole Just Walk Out promise was enabled by this like series of technologies. Again, ceiling mounted cameras, shelf sensors, all sort of came together. So what they've done this week, that's all just background. What they've done this week is they've added RFID to the mix. So RFID, they're small tags. It stands for radio frequency identification, that helps retailers otherwise track product movement and inventory. So that's the beauty. A lot of retailers have already invested in this technology for various logistical purposes, which Amazon is now leaning into, thinking that if they can sort of piggyback on this technology that, one, retailers already have invested in, and two, more importantly, something they're familiar with. One of the challenges and the headwinds Amazon has rolled into in this whole retail as a service play is that it's so disruptive and so, such a departure from the sort of traditional way of doing things that it's faced some sort of resistance and discomfort from retailers. So this sort of like infuses a bit of old school dynamics back into the mix. And could serve as sort of a bridge or like training. Think of it as training wheels for retailers to sort of get comfortable with this thing. So the way that works basically is that, there are tags on the products. And the tags, again, indicate location and things like inertial movement. So it can tell, or the system can tell, when something's been pulled off the shelf, put in your cart. Perhaps it was left in the dressing room. But more importantly, it can tell when it walks out of the store, which brings in the whole, again, just walk out sort of value proposition. So it's infusing just this new technology. We'll see where it goes. What it's done so far is it's sort of tested this. It's partnering with Avery Dennison to do the RFID tags, and it's already tested it in its hometown of Seattle. We all know Amazon's based in Seattle, at Climate Pledge Arena, which is where the Seattle Kraken ice hockey team plays. It did a lot of tests there. It also has previously brought the Just Walk Out technology prior to this RFID thing. It was resident in Lumen Field, which is where the Seahawks play, in the sort of in-stadium pro shop where you go in and, you buy your Marshawn Lynch jersey or your Russell Wilson jersey or, whatever. And then, that's where it's sort of tested it so far. And there it's seen a 60% increase in customer throughput. Again, that's one of the things. It's sort of that retail streamlining in and out of the store, 2x boost in total transactions per game. And, again, it's just expedited transactions. So it's sort of been, again, like slow to gain wide-scale traction. So we'll see what this RFID thing does. Panning back just for perspective, there are about 70 Amazon-owned stores that now apply this technology, and then 85 third-party resellers, including some of those like in-stadium sort of context dimension. And so far, vertically speaking, it's mostly been like airport convenience stores. I think Hudson News had a deal with Amazon to pilot this. And then again, sports and entertainment venues. So what we're really looking for here is to see this sort of break out of those verticals, get more into like clothing and apparel and other things. So we've been watching this for a while. We've been surprised at how slow it's gone. But again, I think that has a lot to do with the sort of revolutionary nature of the value proposition. And retailers just need some time to sort of acclimate to the idea and integrate it. But a lot more to say on, again, Amazon's sort of broader play here with the retail as a service and sort of the diversification move there. But I'll pause there for your reactions, Charlie, and we can go from there.
Well, my first reaction is when they take the Russell Wilson jersey, do they walk out and they say, oh, no, just keep it?
Yeah, so the payments is definitely a key part. So the way this works is a few different modalities there. One is it's also integrated another piece of this retail as a service play, which is Amazon One, which is the palm scanner that you scan on your way in and out of the stores. That validates you as a sort of shopper, and that's tied to your Amazon Prime account so that they can easily onboard people. The other way it's done is through there's just in some cases just like a little sort of tap to pay type of thing as you walk out of the store. So it's not totally seamless and frictionless. There aren't checkout aisles like in a traditional sense, but there is like the system knows what's in your bag. But yeah, you still have to like on your way out just give a quick flick of your credit card to the little tap thing, and it says, "Okay, here's your receipt, good to go."
So the just
there are a
walk
few
out
ways they've been doing it.
It's a qualified just walkout.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. So is the end game pure just walkout? Like they read that? I think we talked about this once before. I made reference to this vague memory of a commercial about this, where an actor, just it sort of looked like he was shoplifting, and then the end, oh, sir, you forgot your receipt or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was like pure just walkout. I mean, he was like shoving it in a trench coat, and that's the end game, right? So how far away are we from is it the end game, and how far away are we from it?
Well, that's one piece of the end game. Yeah, just it's the pure just walkout, but also just sort of these little sort of logistical efficiencies throughout the stores where Amazon One goes, and it wants to demonstrate to retailers sort of those figures I cited in its pilot, where we can boost your customer throughput by 60% or give you higher revenues just based simply on the fact that there are no bottlenecks in the store. It just sort of creates this even flow of traffic throughout the store. People aren't waiting in any given places. And from that, Amazon's end game is if it can talk enough retailers into that selling proposition, it basically has a SaaS-based model in terms of selling this software to the stores, and in a way that hopefully has a positive ROI for the store or for the chain. And then Amazon therefore positions itself as a auxiliary secondary revenue stream, as being this sort of technology provider for retail tech. And the reason why we think that's the case is two things. One is, we talk about this a lot, Charlie, it's just the sort of standard revenue diversification as a core revenue stream matures. In Amazon's case, that's e-commerce. So they're just looking for other ways to continue their revenue growth by going into other big areas. And then number two, this follows the model of what and the playbook of what they've already done, which is AWS. AWS spun out as one of the most successful tech products of the last decade. And they want to do that, or a small version of it, in terms of being an enabler and a provider to bring the retailers of the world up to speed on the logistical and digital technologies they could be using to just sort of boost this is just good old fashioned yield optimization is what it is, but in a fancier package. That's sort of what's going for.
Yeah. Is the appeal to the consumer way different in this scenario than it is to the retailer? Because I think that the appeal to the consumer seems like a better customer experience. Just you walk in, you walk out.
Yeah.
Assuming you do all the pre-setup and all that stuff. For the retailer, it's a much more complex, just efficiencies and so on and so on.
Yeah. You're right. There's a different set of value propositions. For the user, that's a good point. I think that on paper, it has what it needs to really like scratch that itch of like technologies that actually do solve a real problem, solve a real pain point. Whenever you're saving people
Waiting in
time
line, that's the pain
and
point.
pain points,
Yeah.
waiting in line. As opposed to, I always compare this to when mobile payments first came out in the early 2010s, and everyone was like, this is going to be the next big thing. And I just wasn't seeing it because there was no sort of value proposition for the end user. It was more of a sort of tech for tech's sake, Silicon Valley effect, all of us geeking out about how cool it is. But for end users, there was really no just difference in value proposition between swiping your card, which was the old way, and tapping your phone. Like BFD, what's the difference there? You're not going to.
One's cooler. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Is it faster?
Yeah,
Is it easier? Is it cheaper? Whatever.
No, it basically it saves two things. It saves like a millisecond of time in terms of the difference of getting out your credit card, and like my credit card was never a pain point. How much does a credit card weigh? I mean, like no one's complaining about, oh man, these credit cards are just weighing me down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to carry a wallet anyway. Like if they were to go the full distance, anyone pushing that solution has to be like, well, you no longer need your license. You're carrying your wallet either way. So like reducing that wallet by the atomic mass of one credit card is just not. But anyway, the point is that this is sort of it flies against some of those just solution in search of a problem type of thinking. Where I do see, at least on paper, to answer your question, for the end user, there really is potential here to have some tangible benefits of not having to ever wait in line at the grocery store, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you said a few things that just made me think of a different conversation we had about super apps, where I think about WeChat when you talk about the atomic weight of the credit card and all that.
Yeah,
the idea that I haven't been to mainland China. I've been a lot of places. That's one place I have not been. But my understanding is you don't leave the house with your wallet and your keys and all this stuff. You leave with your phone and WeChat.
Yep.
And everything's there. Your phone, every form of identification, every form of payment, etc., is all right there. We're probably not going to get to that point. We've talked about super apps again. But this feels like it's kind of pointing in the direction of, how do we consolidate more of these things that require different either devices or objects or behaviors into one thing. And so it's sort of pushing in that direction in some sense.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like something that sooner or later we're going to feel it's a very normal behavior to walk into a store, fill up a bag, maybe because they ban bags everywhere. But at this point, you fill up a bag that you bring into the store and you just leave with it,
Yeah.
and something registers it all. I think,
and
that clearly what Amazon sees happening at some point, and they're building the infrastructure for it now. They've built it, right? And now it's just a matter for the retailers and the consumers to catch up to that vision, right?
Exactly. And I think, it takes time. Like I mentioned, the acclimation process for the retailers. They need their hands held. I think I used the word training wheels. That's also the case for users. Even though the value proposition, as I said, on paper makes a lot of sense, skip the line, all that stuff. Even still, if we look at recent historical examples of that same thing, it still takes a while. If you remember, like the first time your grocery store had a self-checkout aisle, it was a ghost town. And now, like more and more people actually are comfortable with it and they do it. So it takes a while for consumer acclimation.
But you have that. You go to it's like, okay, I'm saving them a lot of money, but it seems like more effort for me. Whereas this Amazon just walk out. It saves everybody time, right? And I guess it's just it's a behavioral change, like anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, anyway, I've got a very different topic to discuss today. I had a very interesting conversation earlier this week with an old friend of mine from the legacy Yellow Pages industry, Bruce Howard. Very smart businessman, great guy, and he's user-friendly Yellow Pages. He's made a good living off Yellow Pages over the years. We'll just leave it at that. And Bruce was telling me about something he's up to now, which I think it's been going on for a while, in fairness, but I think it has some interesting things to say about what might be the near-term future in kind of the local home services space. And by that, I'm not talking about, big home services platforms. But I'm talking about your local HVAC company driving the trucks around the neighborhood. Bob's and Sons, in business since 1938 or whatever. Those businesses are increasingly being rolled up by private equity companies. So Bruce has partnered with a PE firm that has some legacy in the Yellow Pages business and other, adjacent businesses. They've partnered up to create essentially what's user-friendly home services, and they've rolled up about 16 HVAC and or plumbing companies. And they're on their way to rolling up into about $100 million aggregation of plumbing and HVAC businesses. The margins aren't Yellow Pages margins, but these are healthy businesses. And, the idea is to get it to a certain scale and then exit through another PE transaction of some sort. I'm not quite sure what the end multiples will be, but they'll be healthy, I'm sure. Because I don't think Bruce gets into anything without, the multiples being, with the pot at the end of gold at the end of the rainbow being ample, But what's interesting about this is a couple of things. One, it provides an interesting and a attractive exit opportunity for somebody who owns an HVAC business. Let's say is 58, 59, 60 years old, looking at, okay, how much longer am I going to do this for? Maybe 5 years, maybe a little longer, maybe not much longer. What am I going to do with this business? My son, Bruce joked, he said, some of these guys, their sons want to be astronauts, not plumbers. I don't think most of them want to be either, but but at any rate, so, this business, they're looking, what's my exit? So this is an option. These PEs come along, and Bruce is not the only one. I say, okay, we'll buy this company, whatever the price is, and you can, stay on, work for a while as the general manager of the business or whatever it is, and all the corporate services, all the things you hate, all the billing, all the HR, blah blah blah, the stuff that kept you away from installing HVAC or installing heaters, installing, et cetera, whatever you kind of got into the business to do with your hands. You can get back to doing that and let us handle the corporate stuff. And then, a few years later, if you want to, fly off to Florida, you can do that pretty much at any point once you've made that sale. It's a really interesting exit strategy for a lot of companies. And if you look at the demographics, there's a lot of late 50s, early 60s got people out there owning these businesses that probably are looking for an exit. Might not necessarily have a, give it off to the kids opportunity. Some cases probably, but not in every case. And the exits aren't always obvious. But now a lot of PEs are coming in and seeing this as an opportunity. HVAC, plumbing, pest control, you name it, landscaping. They're targeting these specific industries and rolling them up, getting them to a certain size, certain amount of EBITDA, and then off they exit that business and maybe go do it again somewhere in a different space, perhaps. What's interesting about this, what really got my attention here is that my brother has been through almost exactly the same thing. He was an owner of a music school, and a PE that was focused just on music schools came along, bought his company. Now he's running this business for this private equity, which handles all the corporate stuff centrally, HR, billing, marketing, et cetera. Bruce's company had, learned a thing or two about digital marketing, trying to figure out how to evolve the Yellow Pages business. And they were able to apply those services to this new business, helping the HVAC businesses, not just, hire and fire and handle payroll and et cetera, but also do their digital marketing. So it was just an interesting look into kind of how the local business landscape is evolving.
Mm-hmm. So the value proposition makes sense for, you're right, the proprietor themselves. Like we always say that SMBs, they go into it because they are good at, roofing, right, or nail art, or,
they are not
running a restaurant, or chefs, or, whatever, as opposed to all of a sudden, like, it's what's thrust on them is the role that they were never really good at or wanted, which was to be a digital marketing exec, to be a COO, et cetera. So that makes sense. You kind of take that and give them their exit.
Yeah. And in this conversation, Bruce made that exact point. He's like, most of these people are excellent at, doing the hands-on work itself. They're not, for the most part, particularly great business people. And He meant that not as an insult, but just as a statement of fact, and it's probably true.
Now, so that seems to be the positive part of the value proposition. And I don't want to take anything away from Bruce's effort here or to speculate. So I guess I'll just ask the question, which is, is this sort of swooping in? Is it giving fair market rates? Is it predatory in any way? Just to get that question out of the way.
Well, that's a fair question. Obviously I was talking to the person who would be that predator if that were the case. I didn't get the sense that he saw it that way or that he was approaching it that way.
Sure.
The only thing he said was these business owners are by and large realistic about the multiples they're going to get. So they're not swooping in there and overpaying for these businesses. I didn't get that sense.
Sure. And the business can always say no. I mean, so I guess
he gets turned down. There are different private equities. He's had to compete with other private equity roll-up players for the same deal. So there is.
I mean, these aren't hostile takeovers. It seems. So
no, people can say no, and they can play offers against each other in some cases. So I'm of the sense that people are getting a fair deal.
Call the proprietor's wife. That would be a hostile takeover.
I get the sense that he, the other thing I will say is that he has spent many, many years selling Yellow Pages to the same people he's now buying their businesses,
Yep.
And so these are, the thing he said is the relationships are the secret sauce in his particular group in approaching these home services businesses, in the sense that, okay, I've been selling Bob's HVAC company Yellow Pages for years. We've known each other for years. He trusts me. I know him. He picks up the phone because I call because he trusts me. I think that, that's kind of the environment that this is happening in. So generally, he's not calling up people he's never met and saying, I'd like to buy your business. He's calling up people he's known for years and saying, I'd like to buy your business.
No, it's a smart play. I also like that. I guess what we didn't talk about, but one of the end games here is that the sort of economies of scale will be able to reach, operationally speaking, where you sort of throw all the marketing, all the operations, all of the supply chain, bulk ordering, all of that into sort of one bucket, as opposed to all these disparate businesses.
I think that's the whole idea. Why 16 companies together are much better than 16 independent businesses all doing the same centralized office services themselves.
Negotiating leverage for supplies, all kinds of stuff. Now, in addition to that, I'm not sure if you gained this from the discussion, but from a branding perspective, does it create sort of one national brand pursuant to gaining a sort of, brand equity and trust to the consumer, sort of like an Aspen Dental sort of deal?
That could be the play, but after I hung up with him, I went and Googled all the names of the companies he had mentioned during the conversation. Don't have to get into those here, but
sure.
I looked at, they all still had their own websites, they still have their own branding, but down at the bottom, it was powered by user-friendly media. It's a powered by play, we see that a lot in acquisitions and software and other things too.
Yeah. It reminds me of what Slice is doing in the pizza vertical. They go in, they say, let us be the operating system for your pizza shop. And all those things we mentioned, collectively, bulk ordering, negotiating leverage, taking the logistics and computer systems and reservation systems off that pizza owner's hands. It sounds like that in some ways, at least, which is really smart.
Not unlike it, except with Slice, it's a software relationship, right? It's more, whereas
that's true. They haven't bought these companies. That's
right. So
true.
It's not a acquisition. That's a big difference. Vendor. But otherwise, in terms of the sort of the approach, the thought process of what we're taking off your hands, what we're allowing you to spend more time making pizzas as opposed to all that stuff.
Once you roll up and own those businesses, you don't have to worry about like SaaS churn, right? Because you're not their vendor. You own the company.
And this is kind of a unique angle. I mean, in Bruce's case, he owns a Yellow Pages business. We don't have to go into a long conversation about what's happened to that industry. We all know. He still publishes these books, but he's been winding a few down. As we were talking, he was talking about a few books that he was looking at winding down. But he said one of his motivations in doing this is, I want to save as many jobs as I can in his own organization. And one of the ways to do that is to have your corporate staff basically take what they've been doing for the directory business, but then start doing it for these PE roll-ups, at least extends the life of some of his, I'm sure, very long-standing and loyal employees, and that was also part of his motivation. I mean, obviously the big motivation is let's chase this big earning opportunity, and he's not shy about admitting that, nor should he be. But there was a secondary motivation of giving some of his team on his legacy business something to do, productively, So anyway, I thought it was just a very interesting conversation. What was kind of funny about it is he said, when I first thought about this, I was going to do dentists, and then the pandemic hit, and it's like, this doesn't seem like a particularly good, but he said he was walking around his neighborhood during the pandemic because everyone was going on walks, during COVID. He said he kept seeing vans in front of people's homes, for HVAC or construction or whatever it was. And he's like, that's where the opportunity is, That's what gave him the insight, which I thought was really fascinating. Even though he's been working with these companies for years and years, the insight he got was that they were crushing it during the pandemic when he was thinking about, let's do a PE play of some sort like this, So anyway, that's the last point on that. Yeah. So Mike, who won the week?
Sure. So I've been looking a lot at Snapchat or Snap and its Snapchat Plus subscription product. It's showing no signs of slowing down. Just this last week, it passed 5 million paid users. And the cool thing is that those sort of milestones are actually accelerating. So it has found the sort of sweet spot in terms of product market fit, in terms of feature set for things that people will pay for. We've gone down that list in the past. I'm not going to do it right now, but you can check out Localogy Insider. But anyway, if you look at the numbers there, 5 million subscribers, it's $4 a month, which is about $48 a year. That's about almost $250 million in annual revenue, which is about 5% of Snap's overall revenue. So not a huge sort of percentage of revenue, but it continues to validate this model as that ticks up, and it goes towards revenue diversifications. It goes towards validating this model that everyone's been sort of trying to throw against the wall in terms of what will people pay for in paid subscriptions. But we're going to keep watching this and see as it continues to tick up. It also happens, I should add, it coincides with some attrition that not just Snapchat, but the entire sort of digital ad world is seeing with sort of some of the privacy-based tracking restrictions of the past several years. So now is exactly the right time to start to sort of validate models like this that diversify away from ad revenue. So Snapchat winner of the week, or Snap winner of the week for hitting that latest milestone and no sign of slowing down.
All right, Mike, I'm going to be super quick with mine. Google 25. I mean, I think someone should say hats off to Google for making it 25 years. They just barely dragged themselves over the 25-year finish line. And I saw just a great, just massively passive-aggressive post on LinkedIn about this. And this guy, I'm not going to name him because I forgot his name already, basically said, congrats on, winning on 25th year. And right below it, he said, oh, and Leonardo DiCaprio said today that he does all his searches on TikTok now. I was like, okay, man. That's one way to congratulate Google. Right. Anyway, Mike, you want to read us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been This Week in Local. Stay tuned every week for more episodes. You can find the show on all major podcast networks and find out more at localogy.com. So please subscribe, like, and comment. Your engagement helps others find us. So I'm Mike Boland with Charles Laughlin. Our producer is Dara Sweat. So thanks for listening and see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Localogy's This Week in Local with Mike Boland and Charles Laughlin. Be sure to subscribe for more.